The city at night unfolded before their eyes like an endless kaleidoscope of lights reflected in the windows of skyscrapers. 5 men were sitting at a table in a private club hidden behind a heavy oak door. Their glasses of expensive whiskey shimmered in the chandeliers, and the air was filled with an atmosphere of conspiracy. Vincent, the wealthiest and most ambitious of them all, spoke confidently, as if it were not an idea but a long-standing matter. He laid out his plans in front of his friends, clear, carefully thought out, like blueprints for a new project. His gaze slid from one to the other, looking for confirmation of their interest. "Imagine a place where each of us can feel free," he said, leaning back in his chair, "a loft in the city center with all the amenities you can think of. No restrictions. Only the 5 of us have keys. No one will ask questions." Michael, known for his caution, frowned, twirling his glass in his hands. "What if someone finds out?" he asked. "It seems like a risky move." Vincent smiled as if this question was familiar to him. "No one will know if we are careful. This place is our secret. We don't talk about it with anyone, not even our closest friends. We are adults. We know what we're doing." Alex, who always loved risk and novelty, raised his glass. "Why not? We all have our secrets. The loft is the perfect way to keep them between us." Julian, known for his adventurous spirit, supported him. "It sounds great. A place where you can forget about all your responsibilities. I'm in." Chris, the youngest of the group, looked a little hesitant. But the pressure from his friends and the excitement of the idea did the trick. "Okay," he said, "if you all agree, then I'm in." The deal was sealed with glasses clinking in a symbolic toast. Vincent promised to organize everything, to find a room, to equip it, to take care of confidentiality. He was in his element, managing the process as he does with many of his business projects. The rest of us, captivated by his enthusiasm, could only imagine how their lives would change with the advent of such a place. The loft Vincent found exceeded all expectations. Located on the top floor of an old industrial building, it combined modern design with luxury. The huge windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and everything inside was perfect, from the designer furniture to the discreet video surveillance system Vincent had installed just in case. "This place is perfect," Alex said, looking around the rooms. "You've outdone yourself, Vince." "This is our space," Vincent repeated, handing each of his friends a key. "And may it always be so." The morning seemed normal until Alex's phone rang with an alarm. Michael's name appeared on the screen. His voice on the phone was tense, almost panicked. "Alex, it's urgent. I need you to come to the loft. Right away." Alex didn't ask any questions. He knew something was up. He hurriedly threw on his jacket and left the apartment, trying to calm his heartbeat. The loft had always been a place of freedom for them, but Michael's tone made him assume the worst. When he entered the room, the feeling of anxiety became almost tangible. The spacious room, which usually aroused admiration for its interior, now seemed oppressive. He saw Michael, Vincent, and Julian standing motionless by the bed. Their faces were pale and their eyes were frozen in shock. Alex came closer, and his breath caught in his throat. A dead woman was lying on the snow-white bed. Her skin was pale, her lips were bluish, and her open eyes were staring at nothing. A deep red rope mark was visible on her neck, indicating the cause of death. There were glass shards on the floor and a few drops of red wine mixed with the carpet. "What the hell is this?" Alex wheezed, not taking his eyes off the body. "We don't know," Vincent muttered. His usual confidence was gone. "She was already here when I got here." "How did she get here?" Alex asked, looking from the body to his friends. At that moment, Chris entered the room. Seeing the scene before him, he froze in place. "Who is it?" he whispered. No one could answer. The woman was a complete stranger. Her face, though cold with death, retained traces of graceful features. But none of them could tell who she was or how she had ended up in their hidden place. Panic gradually took hold of each of them. Vincent walked around the room holding his head. Julian was nervously looking at his watch, as if searching for an answer in time. Michael was silent, but his hands were shaking as he tried to make sense of the chaos. "We have to call the police," Vincent finally said. "It's the only option." "The police?" Julian jumped as if the words had shocked him. "Do you realize what would happen if they found out about the loft? Our deal, our secrets, everything would come out." "No, that's not an option." Vincent walked over to Julian, his eyes cold. "What do you propose? To hide it? And how do you imagine hiding it if the body is already here?" Michael intervened, trying to stop the argument. "Enough of this. We have to be reasonable. First, we need to understand who she is and how she got here. One of us gave her a key." These words sounded like a sentence. Everyone realized that there was a secret in their circle that someone was hiding. But who was it? And why did this secret cost this woman her life? Alex, trying to collect his thoughts, came closer to the body. He noticed a detail that had been overlooked before. A small key was visible in her jacket pocket. He pulled it out and examined it. It was the key to the loft. "Here's the thing," Alex said, showing the discovery. "One of us gave her this key. The question is, who and why?" The silence that followed was almost tangible. Everyone looked at each other with suspicion. The loft, which was supposed to be a place of freedom, had now turned into a trap from which no one could find a way out. The loft, which once seemed to be a symbol of freedom, had now turned into a cramped cell. The men sat in one room, each of them feeling the weight of a burden. The silence was so thick that only the sound of someone's betrayal could cut through it. "We all know that one of us is involved," Alex began, his voice steady but tense. "There's no way she got the key for nothing." Julian, who was usually confident, now looked irritated. "Maybe someone just gave her the key and didn't think about the consequences," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "But why did she die here?" Michael replied sharply, his eyes burning. "In a loft that only the five of us know about? It's not just a coincidence." Vincent, who had been silent until then, looked up from the floor. His face was serious. "If we don't find the answer, the police will find it for us. And then they will decide who is to blame." Vincent's words shook everyone to the bone. They knew that the police would not only solve the murder, but also expose their secrets. The loft, a place created to hide sins, now threatened to destroy their entire lives. Chris, who had been a quiet observer until now, finally spoke up. "We have to figure this out for ourselves. Let's talk to each other. Let's be honest, at least for now." His suggestion sounded logical, but it was also terrifying. Everyone knew that honesty would require disclosing what they had been hiding for so long. Alex started with himself. "I haven't used the loft lately," he said, looking everyone in the eye. "But I saw you, Vincent, with a woman at the bar a few days ago. Was it her?" Vincent sighed, as if he had been preparing for this conversation. "Yes, I saw her. She came to me on her own, asked to talk to me. I didn't promise her anything. But I didn't kill her." This confession only increased the tension. Michael couldn't take it anymore. "And you didn't think to tell us about it? Do you even realize the situation you've gotten us all into?" Julian interrupted. "And you, Michael, are so honest? Didn't you think we knew how often you came here? What are you hiding here?" Michael abruptly stood up from his chair, but Alex stopped him with a gesture. "That's enough," Alex said. "Arguing won't solve anything. We need to find out the truth while there's still time." They decided to check everything they could find in the loft. Julian found the woman's phone hidden between the couch cushions. But the phone was locked. Her last calls could reveal who she was talking to before she died, but without a password, it remained a mystery. They also found signs of a struggle near the bed, scratches on the parquet, heel marks. It didn't look like an accidental death. Someone had fought with her. Each new piece of evidence made them look at each other with increasing suspicion. Each of them had something they would rather hide. But now these secrets were becoming the key to the mystery. Vincent finally broke the silence. "We have to find the password to the phone. It might give us some answers." Chris nodded. "If we can find out who she was talking to, we can figure out who brought her here. But we're running out of time. The police could show up at any moment." With every passing minute, the tension grew. The friends were no longer confident in themselves or in each other. Their agreement, which was supposed to be a source of freedom, had now turned into a trap where anyone could be guilty. Night fell over the city, and the loft plunged into tense silence. The five men continued to search for answers, each on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The dead woman's phone lay on the table, like a silent witness to the events, hiding all the answers. But the device remained locked, and they couldn't uncover its secrets. Julian, who always looked confident, now began to pace nervously around the room. He stopped at the window, peering out into the darkness of the city. "We can't leave it like this," he said, turning to the others. "Some of us know more than we're telling. It's no longer a secret, it's a disaster." Alex sat down at the table and picked up the phone, examining it carefully. If it's a phone with modern security, it will be difficult to unlock it without specialists. But there is one thing, maybe we can guess the password. "Guess?" Vincent said, his voice sounding ironic. "That doesn't sound like a realistic plan. We're already wasting time." "What do you suggest?" Michael replied sharply. "Sit around and wait for the police to barge in and tear us apart with their interrogations? I suggest we find the person who brought her here," Vincent shouted. Vincent walked over to Julian and pointed a finger at him. "You've always been the one who had more than he was telling. What are you hiding this time?" Julian threw Vincent's hand away and seemed about to explode, but at the last second he held back. Yes, I knew her, he suddenly admitted. His words hung in the air. Her name was Marissa. She was my ex-girlfriend. She started blackmailing me a few weeks ago, and I decided to talk to her here in the loft to avoid any unnecessary witnesses. The silence that followed these words was almost unbearable. Julian continued. She demanded money. She said she would tell my wife if I didn't pay. But I didn't want to do that. I left her here. She was alive when I left. What? Alex asked, his voice breaking into a shout. Do you realize we have problems now? I thought it would be over, Julian defended himself, but obviously something went wrong. If Julian had left Marissa alive, who had killed her? Who used the key to get in after him? Alex returned to the phone. One thought kept running through his mind. The password might be connected to something personal. He tried several combinations, his date of birth, the name Julian had mentioned. Nothing worked. Suddenly, Chris, who had been sitting in silence until then, spoke up. If she was blackmailing you, Julian, then maybe the password is something she manipulated. Like your date together or something that had meaning to her. Alex tried a new combination. The date Julian said was their anniversary. The phone unlocked. Messages appeared on the screen. They were sent to several recipients, but the last text caught everyone's attention. I'm at the loft. Meet me at 8 o'clock. We have a lot to talk about. This message was addressed to Vincent. All eyes turned to him. Vincent turned pale but tried to remain calm. She texted me but I didn't call her, he said. I didn't answer. These words sounded unconvincing. Alex moved closer to him, his voice low and threatening. You didn't call her, but you were here. And you knew she was coming. Vincent remained silent. The tension in the room became almost unbearable. They had finally arrived at the answer, but they did not yet realize the price of this truth. The tension in the loft reached its peak. After the phone was unlocked and the last message addressed to Vincent, all eyes were on him. Vincent was sitting on the edge of the couch, his face pale and his hands shaking slightly. But as always, he tried to maintain a mask of calm. Yes, she wrote to me, Vincent said, his voice breaking slightly, but I didn't call her. I wasn't even planning on coming over that night. Michael exploded. Stop lying. You were here, Vincent. You're always here. And now we're dealing with a dead woman and you're playing innocent? Vincent stood up abruptly, glancing at each of the people present. Do you think it's me? Do you all really believe that I could have done this? His voice was filled with anger and despair. I knew her, but I didn't kill her. I don't know who did. Chris stepped in to try to defuse the conflict. We can't just blame each other. But the fact remains that she wrote to you, and we need to understand why she came here. Vincent lowered his head, as if searching for answers in his own memory. Then he seemed to break down. She wanted money. She knew about our loft and wanted to take advantage of it. She said she would reveal everything to our families if I didn't agree. Alex stood up and walked closer to Vincent. And you decided to make a deal with her here, in a place that was supposed to be a secret? Vincent sighed. I wanted to stop her. But I wasn't going to pay her anything. I came to talk, but she was already dead when I got there. These words caused a new wave of indignation. Everyone started talking at the same time, each accusing the other. The loft turned into chaos, filled with shouting and accusations. But then Alex seemed to remember something. Wait, he said, raising his hand to stop everyone, the cameras. His words made everyone freeze. The loft was equipped with a video surveillance system, hidden but active. Vincent had set it up for emergencies and now it could be the key to the mystery. Vincent shook his head. The video is stored on the server, but I turned it off a few weeks ago. Michael rolled his eyes. Of course you did. How convenient. Alex, however, didn't believe it. He went to the security control panel and tried to access the recordings. To his surprise, the cameras were still working. He found the video from that night. Everyone held their breath as the video began to play. The screen showed Marissa entering the loft, holding a small handbag. She looked around nervously as if she was afraid someone would see her. A few minutes later, Vincent entered the room. Their conversation was mute, but it was clear that it was tense. Vincent was gesturing and Marissa was shouting at him. Then Vincent abruptly left the room, leaving her alone. A few more minutes passed and another figure appeared, Julian. He closed the door behind him, approached Marissa, and their conversation quickly escalated into a quarrel. She was showing him something on her phone, and he tried to snatch the device from her hands. The video showed Julian pushing Marissa. She fell and her head hit the edge of the table. She stopped moving. Julian froze, then took her purse and key before quickly leaving the room. When the video ended, the room was filled with oppressive silence. Julian stood motionless as if paralyzed. It was an accident," he whispered. "I didn't mean to, it happened so fast." Michael rushed to him, but Alex stopped him. "That's enough. The police will deal with this." Julian didn't resist when Alex dialed the number. His eyes were blank and he seemed to have already accepted his fate. When the police arrived, the friends watched in silence as Julian was led out of the loft. Each of them felt relieved but also deeply ashamed. Their secret space, created for freedom, had become a place of destruction. The city was slowly waking up from the night, but the windows of the loft remained dark. The empty room seemed to be frozen in time. It had once been filled with voices, laughter and secrets, and now it was a silent witness to the tragedy. Dust settled on the polished surfaces, and subtle traces of the struggle by the bed still remained, as if to remind us of the night that changed the lives of 5 men forever. After Julian's arrest, each of them tried to return to their normal lives, but it was almost impossible. Alex, who had always been the one who kept order in their circle, now felt only guilt. He often wondered if he could have stopped it all if he had paid attention to the small signals. His nights became sleepless, and his thoughts were filled with heavy memories of that fateful night. Vincent plunged back into his work, using it as an escape from reality. But even the architectural drawings that used to bring him joy now seemed empty to him. He couldn't forget his role in the story, how he had brought Marissa to the loft and allowed her to become part of their world. His career began to suffer, and he increasingly thought about leaving the city. Michael, who had always been the voice of reason in the group, now felt deeply anxious. He withdrew from his family, afraid that his secrets would sooner or later come to light. His wife noticed the changes, but he refused to talk. He got into the habit of sitting in his car in front of his house for hours, trying to collect his thoughts. Chris, the youngest and least experienced of the 3, felt that he had lost something important: his trust in people. He began to avoid his friends and colleagues, gradually turning into a recluse. What had happened in the loft left an indelible mark on him, and he could not shake the feeling that his life would never be the same again. As for Julian, his life fell apart before his eyes. The trial became a high-profile event that was covered by all the local news. His lawyers tried to present the case as an accident, but the video footage and testimonies of other participants were undeniable. Julian was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to many years in prison. All this time he remained aloof, not trying to justify his actions. His eyes remained empty, just like the night he realized what he had done. The loft remained empty. His lease was terminated, and the owner put the place up for sale. But no one wanted to buy it. Rumors of what had happened spread through the city, and even those who didn't know all the details felt that the place was filled with something dark. One day, a few months after the trial, Alex decided to return to the loft. He opened the door, which creaked in the silence, and entered the room. Everything remained almost exactly as he remembered it that night. He walked around the room, touching the furniture that had once seemed part of their safe haven. But now they were only a reminder of the lives they had destroyed. On the floor he found a piece of paper left behind, a scribbled sheet with some notes. These were Vincent's plans for the loft, made at a time when they still believed that this place would become their paradise. Alex folded the sheet and put it in his pocket, as if he were keeping a part of their past. The sun was coming through the dirty windows, casting a faint light on the empty walls. Alex sighed and closed the door. He knew he would never come back here again. But the memories of the loft, its secrets, and the consequences of that night would stay with him forever.